lot of what can get people into trouble is success to a degree. I think of opportunity. Just think of a big tank. It's completely waterproof and airproof, but there's 2 holes. The more opportunity that comes into the tank, the greater the velocity at which you can charge your prices and the greater the level of stuff that you can get away with. Everybody has intellectual property. It's what they have that allows them to mechanically get a desired outcome for themselves that could be massively valuable if in the hands of somebody else.
Before we start this podcast, I have one little favor to ask you. Can you please hit the subscribe button down below so we can help more people every single week? Thank you.
The most important thing that you can do is spread ideas with your content. And then if people want to chat to you about those ideas, then you have something of profitable merit.
Give an example.
Yeah, so you might be just like, hey, I've come up with this cool new idea to use AI to reduce the amount of time that I spend in my Gmail inbox, right? And then put your hand up and comment PDF if you want the 2-page PDF that I've put together to show you how to do it. Everybody that comments PDF has invested a microsecond to type PDF, which infers that 1 to 5% of those people would be willing to transact on that idea. And then out of those 1 to 5%, like we were discussing with James the other day, if you've got 100 of those, there's arguably 1 to 5% of that, 1 to 5% who are willing to invest $10,000 to $50,000 to solve that problem.
And then from an ads perspective, you're looking to ramp that because the 1% of 10 people is much better to get 1% of 10,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the game becomes, how do we economically manipulate the front end so that we can break even, so that we can like by a factor of 10 increase the search base. So instead of, and that's why there's so much opportunity in the market, is because most people are looking at, oh, well, you know, if I reach out to 100 people and only 1% of them's interested, that's a heap of work. And it's like, yeah, but not if you can figure out how to build a paid traffic engine that allows you to get in front of 100,000 people a day that pays for itself. Now, those 15 people, instead of taking a year to find them, you can find them in a week, you know?
Okay, man, this is super interesting. We're straight in the deep end. So how do you, because ads is still super new and novel to me. You'll love this. Will Brown, he was like teaching me like to run ads and shit. And, and I went through like his program and stuff, just specifically to learn ads. Because we never have done it, but now we have the capital to do it because the business is validated, especially the coaching, it's validated to do it. Anyway, he was kind of recommending going to a few to ad agencies, and like some of them are super expensive, but he like recommended me to do it. But he wasn't forcing it. He was like, it's probably a good idea. And I was like, oh yeah, it's fine, whatever, I'll just figure it out. Set up the Google account. 1 second later, suspended.
Really?
1 second later, dude.
Probably because you're fresh. I don't know.
The reason being was because the card was a digital bank card.
Yeah, okay.
And it was based in Ireland or Lithuania where the bank is registered.
Yeah.
And Google just goes, goodbye on that. And I was like, fuck sake, dude. That was actually like last week. So the reason I'm saying this is because like I've learned the concepts obviously in implementing or whatever, but then there's all those nuances.
Yeah.
So when you are running your ads, how do you think about what to give them on the back end? Is it a lead magnet? Is it a low ticket offer? How do you think about that process?
Yeah, so
this episode of Kickoff Sessions is sponsored by Tenplus. I've been using Tenplus in a hot tropical climate for electrolytes, for also hydration, keep up with training, and also my performance in my podcast and in my business. Tenplus is actually designed to enhance performance specifically in tropical climates. The result is a potent blend of Indonesian ingredients that enhance peak performance and also taste awesome as well. I'm using Tenplus every single day right now across their mango, citrus, orange, and pineapple flavor. You can order it directly in Indonesia by checking out the link right down below here. So check out Tenplus and you'll be able to get access to a wide range of their products to enhance your performance, improve your hydration, and also be able to perform at a better level.
Ads it's really just trying to start the conversation, and the best thing you can do with the front end ad, well, like you obviously have to start at the back and go, what are you actually selling? What's the high ticket thing? Is it services? Is it like a project process? Is it training or coaching? And then ask yourself, what is the one immediate, quickest win that you can give to people that's hyper tangible in the shortest time frame, and you pull that out, and that's generally the best lead magnet. So then, the more valuable that thing is, the better, and then you end up with, hey, this is $100 product on the front end. We will get you this outcome in the next week if you just follow the instructions in this. And then what that allows people to do is have a win, and that's probably more important. Engineer a product that gets people a win on the front end. And if you can just break even on selling that offer, then you have all of these people that you're getting wins. They want to continue the conversation. So you don't even have to worry about it connecting so much. Just get somebody a win on the front. So you might be helping somebody with like a podcast, and you might be like, here's how to build the structure for the next 60 episodes of your podcast in less than 2 hours. So that's super tangible. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but at least they're like, man, I'm going to see my next 60 episodes and the name of my podcast when at the moment I've got nothing but the intent to do so. At least you've kind of got them to an outcome, and then they associate all that progress to you. So it's only natural that the conversation advances with you in the picture.
Fuck, man. That's super interesting, because I would think that it would just be, you'd get them into some sort of VSL, and then it's you're hammering them for the high ticket approach, or you have a sales team or whatnot. Now, obviously, there's no one way to do things, but the way that you kind of scale it's really good. And we can talk about your offer too. I want to actually ask you about a random question first, though.
Yeah, go.
Explain to me the bank robbery in Chicago story.
Yeah, and I mean, I forget the origins of it, but it's so funny that you found that. I don't even know how you found it, but it's just a really simple story that if you continually remember it, everything is really simple. So basically, I think 1890s. Every time I tell this story, I probably get the timing right. It's 1880s to 1890s. There was a guy running around Chicago robbing banks, and they caught him after the fourth or fifth go, and they had him in the jail cell. And they're like, "Why do you keep robbing these banks?" And he just answered, "Because that's where the money is." And I like to bring it up with everybody that I'm helping, both in my design business and obviously with the coaching program as well, because people forget that the most important thing is, where is the money actually located? So another metaphor to think about is, business is the game of extracting oil out of the ground. It's like, where is it so that we can extract it? And generally technicians and people that love their craft work really hard at building the engineering equipment to get the stuff out of the ground, to the point that they lose focus on where the fucking oil is. And it's the people that know where the oil is, and it's the people that know where to set up that make the real money. So if you've got a 10 out of 10 ability to find oil reserves, and you've got a bucket, you will make 100x versus a company that are the best engineering company at extracting oil from the ground, who don't know where to put it.
That's so powerful, man. And that's the beauty of selling something before building it.
Yeah.
Which again, I learned from William, right? Was that I would come up with a hypothesis, or what I was doing in the podcast space when we had the done for you is different, because like you can't ask someone what they want, right? But in the coaching, you can build it around what they want. So I remember I booked 50 calls, took all 50, asked everyone what they're struggling with, said I could solve every single problem, wrote it down in a spreadsheet, and just created a video around it. Yeah. That's literally how it happened.
And that would convert.
And it's where people were, which is in like LinkedIn, and just going towards that. Now we are opening up Instagram, because I think for one-off payments, there's a good opportunity for people on Instagram, because they're kind of younger demographic.
Yeah.
Whereas like for me, all like the C-suite executives were all in LinkedIn for the first 2 years of our business. So again, it's like, this is an interesting point, which I have had to gone around to. You know, in the online space, everyone is like, they have these hard beliefs that they don't even believe. Is it ads, organic? agency versus coaching, sales calls, no sales calls, but they attach their self-worth to that random process. It's not even an outcome, it's just a fucking process. And then they're like, oh, we're not going to do sales calls because we're like better than that, or we're not going to run ads because we're better than that. My thesis, especially if you're like broke and you're trying to make as much money as possible, that's what you're optimizing for, is that you need to have no personal like ties to any of these metrics and just view them as individual vessels. So again, you know, going where the money's at, guys will be like, oh, I want to focus on Instagram because I can also use it for dating. Genuinely, that's people's brains, right? Where it's like, no, if you go to your virtue signaling woke LinkedIn account, that's where you can make a ton of money, but you're just too proud to go over there.
Yeah.
And I've had that debate with a lot of Twitter guys. So it's fucking so funny. I've been in like the podcast content space for a long time, much longer than I was like an entrepreneur. So I was like content first and that. And I had met a lot of the really big guys on Twitter, and they were all like, oh, like LinkedIn's so gay, da 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 da. And I was like, dude, like your business would just be so much bigger if you were just on LinkedIn. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, whatever. Slowly but surely, every single one of them started to move over, now to the point that they're actually bigger on this platform, making way more money. And Twitter is like something that's just a hobby.
Yeah.
And it's just ironic because like even the guys at the very, very top of the game still don't follow where the money trails are, right? And Shan Hannaf said that to me. He was like, at the end of the day, your only job as a CEO is to wake up, see where the money is, and just go towards it every day.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing though, is that every trail and habit of activities builds an identity that becomes calcified. And then every time, even though the logic in your head can be like, oh, well, this is just blatantly obvious, a better thing to do. It's like, but I'm already this person. And
yeah, dude.
And that's like, that was the toughest thing for me. Like the reason it took me like eight years to get my ass into gear is because I was holding too much onto the ego of trying to become a rock star designer. And then the minute you kind of hit rock bottom and go, well, fuck, there's no pot of gold at the end of this. It's way too much effort for such a minimal return. When you get to that like rock bottom component, it's like, well, I'm happy to construct with whatever meaningful things there are in front of me now because I've broken the old model. I understand that the old model won't be a vehicle to get me to where I am. So a lot of what can get people into trouble is success to a degree. And that's why a lot of really successful entrepreneurs are super sporadic, and they can pivot because they understand that the vehicles that they're building, like a bike can only go so fast, a motorcycle can only go so fast, a Ferrari can only go so fast. You're not going to be able to get to supersonic speed being the best pedaler of a push bike. You know?
So true, man.
And so like that's the annoying thing. So like, you know, like as awesome as it was to go to James's mastermind, it's also the like, oh fuck, I'm starting from scratch again.
In what way?
Well, the existing model isn't the model that's gonna get me to the next level of where I want to get to. It has flaws.
So let's, especially for people and for myself, like, so model you have right now, what's the offer and what you were doing at a high level, and then where do you want to get to, and like what's that offer stack and lifestyle look like?
Yeah, so like I'll give you like just a bit more context. So I've got a design studio that's Australian based that we do probably 60 to 100 grand a month, and that's just purely ads and email outreach to Chinese manufacturers, and that does pretty well. But the problem with it doesn't scale because of the amount of complexity. Like the tooling and the setup cost for like even an arm like this for this podcast can cost like 300, 400 grand. And if you make a mistake, you're liable as the designer and the person being responsible for the manufacture. So it's you're
not even a designer, you're an engineer.
Yeah, well, it's design and engineering. Like an industrial designer is hey, we've got this cool idea for a product. We, boom, make 10,000 of them. And our job is to design it and then figure out how it actually gets produced in the factory. So it's very fun. It's very rewarding. but it's a horrible business model to scale because of the amount of risk associated. The minute you juggle 5 or 6 projects, you can easily make a mistake. And, I've made a couple of mistakes that have cost us like $250,000. So it scares, it's like, oh man, and I'm not even in Australia. So it's like, how do you mitigate the risk? Well, you only work on 1 or 2 projects at a time. Okay, cool. That business model can't go any further because I live in Bali. How do we figure out how to take advantage of the intellectual property that I've acquired? Well, profitable design is a byproduct of people, me reaching out, trying to get more people to work for us and kind of contract to my design business, them going, nah, but how the hell did you get so busy? So then that's what provided the motivation to be like, there's an opportunity here to sell the IP of how I built this whole thing. So we sell an $8,000 to $10,000 training program, $25,000 to $36,000 private coaching, and then a massive array of like $100 to $200 products that we run ads to. What was the rest of the question?
Like, how does that piece in terms of the operating model, where you want to get to also from like a lifestyle perspective? So let's say profitable designer with the 8,000 and the higher approach and the lower approach, whatever. What's the workload that you're doing right now, and like how intensive is that, and how much does it bear a cost on you personally as well?
Yeah, like it's only, both businesses combined are probably only 30 hours a week, but 15 hours of that 30 is like doing stuff that sucks. It's like dealing with it's basically just the nature of the problems that arise, if that makes sense.
Slack becomes a problem solving machine versus anything else.
Well, like, but basically what ends up happening is like the more momentum that I've created in a business, that basically all of the staff that I pay get to deal with all the things that are working well, but my job is to fix all the things that break. So the credit card breaking down with Facebook, or us getting like mass spammed on the email and all of our emails stop communicating. There's no individual person in the team that can solve these very fluid thinking problems. Mm-hmm. So you spend most of your time basically just maintaining the machine, because most things aren't supposed to work at scale. Like even a lot of software, like Stripe doesn't work at scale. You start running into issues if a couple of people provide, request refunds, then they start to put like a question mark over your account, even though we've got like probably 12,500 transactions. And then ads start to capitulate when you spend so much, and then payments overseas to contractors and dealing with international money laundering rules if somebody's in South America. So you spend most of your time dealing with the byproduct of the success of what you've built. And it becomes more coagulated as you progress. So what it is the realization of, we have to rebuild based on everywhere where the business is coagulating and kind of calcifying, if that makes sense. And that's the awesome thing about, like meeting up with you a couple of weeks ago for that mastermind, was understanding that there's a way more effective way to build everything with fewer moving parts, to get a better outcome in considerably less time. So
would you do that all on your own, or are you still going to do it with a small team?
I'm going to keep the team. I'm going to keep the team the same, because I'm like super lucky with who's in the team. So, we've got 3 people here, and then we've got a salesperson, and then we've got and then a setter, and then we've got 2 people that do outreach for the design business, and then obviously the design team in China. It's keeping the team the same, but it's changing the actual products and the services and the price points. That's where the vast majority of the change is going to come from.
Yeah, because again, we go back to the bicycle, motorbike, fucking Ferrari example. It's not like you're going back to zero. And this is what's interesting, is that for me, I used to always think that we have a done for you offer, which is like our hero offer. And I would think that if we're adding in something else, I'm splitting focus, diluting focus, I'm doing two different things. But in theory, we're still doing the same thing, which is we're making podcasts easy to grow, but we're just solving the problem differently.
Yeah.
And then by unbundling and unbundling and unbundling, we're getting a higher return for the pieces that we're unbundling. Does that make sense?
Totally.
But you have to spend the 3-4 years or the 8 years or whatever to get to that point, so that now you can run an almost simpler, more efficient side offer, you know? And like, in theory, if I was to go full James Kemp, I'd get rid of the done for you, but I don't want to because of the fact that it makes so much money.
Yeah.
And it's a different model. Like, it's reoccurring high ticket every single month. You might not get 1,000 people in there, but you don't need 1,000 people in there at 5K a month, right?
No, totally.
Where it's like, for me, the way I think about it is that the offer stack is to capture the economic model of everywhere else, but with just less time involved, you know? So, and also, you got to think about it this way too. Because you've done a very intensive, all-in business done for you and all the components, you now can just run this miniature business within a business just much more effectively because you've done something really complicated. Whereas if you started out just with a fucking community and whatnot and there was no one there, you would also find that very difficult. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Because you didn't learn like real operational skills to run a business. That's why a lot of these guys who are like course sellers have never ran an actual organization with problems to Stripe and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, my question for your dad is, if you are running a simpler model, does that not mean that you still have problems though?
Yeah, you have problems, but they're not. You're just picking the problems that you want.
Yeah.
And I think, you really. It's like the idea you can put somebody. We were joking the other day. You can live in Bali. Your problems don't go away. You end up complaining about, oh man, why does it take so long to
get Gojek?
Yeah, to get Gojek. Why does it take so long for somebody to cook my food and deliver it to my house at a fifth of the cost that it would in the Western world? You know what I mean? Well, it's the same in business. You've got the same dispersion of things that you're grateful for and the things that you're not, the things that annoy you. You've kind of got to pick your poison. But I think it's trying to determine what problems actually take a hit on the energy and what problems are actual fun problems to solve, if that makes sense. Yeah. So the reshuffling of the deck chairs and building from scratch again allows you to build a model that avoids a lot of where too much emotional energy is being sucked away, if that makes sense.
100%. It makes perfect sense, dude.
And that to me is more important. And in the same way, like I've always been a massive believer that if you just figure out how to get people incredible outcomes, somehow money will follow you. But it's also like the same idea. It's like, if you just figure out how to invest all of your time into something that you're absolutely buzzed about doing, like attention, eyeballs, and money will follow you. And if you can get both of those things, if it can be like provide people with insane customer experiences to the point where they're like crying and ecstatic on a Zoom call when you ask them a few questions, and you feel like there's not one part of your day that's emotionally a sacrifice, then that's the best version of the business model. And that's like, think about it. Like how the fuck is anybody making money off podcasts? It's just recording audio. It's so stupid. But what happens is people are passionate about their topics, and then people pay attention to what people are passionate about, and attention equals money.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, like you really just got to cut everything that you don't like.
And it's very interesting when you compare done for you versus done with you. I feel like done for you is such a scapegoat. People use you as an excuse for their like failures.
Yeah.
And then done with you is much more like collaborative. But it's almost like an ethos, basically. When you know you're going into a coaching effect program, you know that this person is not going to create the funnel for me.
Yeah.
and not be a scapegoat. So it's just a different, and we can get to boundaries as well, which I actually want to ask you about. But it's about, I don't know, it's almost like their expectation of you. So let me ask you about that. I want to, so I saw one of your posts, which is like kind of building like a $1 million design business in like 10 hours or less a week. How do you do that from a time management perspective and then setting the boundaries and expectations with a client?
Yeah. So I've taken everything from the coaching and consulting environment and applied it to the design space. So it all just comes down to priming and the content people see before they start an engagement. So the greater the demand that you can create for your business, and like I think of opportunity, just think of a big tank. It's completely waterproof and airproof, but there's 2 holes. The more opportunity that comes into the tank, the greater the velocity at which you can charge your prices, and the greater the level of stuff that you can get away with. So if you have 10 units of time on your calendar, but you've got 300 units of demand on that time, you can basically do whatever the hell you want, right? So by creating an overabundance of opportunity, you can be like, this is where my capability starts and where it ends. If you want to go beyond this, that's completely fine. Here's the invoice for that. And that's by far the easiest way to think about it, is be super, super clear with everything that you're willing to do, and only do things, especially from like a service delivery standpoint, only do things that you've already cost engineered out. So if you think about like Musk spent 3 years working on the factory floor at Tesla. Why? Because their biggest problem was they were spending time, effort, and engineering resource into parts that shouldn't have actually been in the car. So only offer your clients something that you've cost engineered, that you know you're going to be profitable delivering, even from a done for you standpoint. And then everything that fits outside of that, clearly state, we can do that, but it's marked up at this rate because we haven't figured that thing out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you put up paywalls every time there's going to be an operational bottleneck with delivering something. You just provide a paywall, and you figure out what's the core offer that it's going to be applicable to 90% of the marketplace, which I'm sure maybe comes down to 3 or 4 steps. But then there's like another 20 things that you could do that they expect, and be like, yeah, I can do those things, but that's an extra $2,000 a month. And then what you'll find is people like, we don't need that.
Yeah.
And the only reason people create like sticky situations with like done for you client relationships is because they haven't defined the terms of the agreement enough. So like you're from obviously the UK, or like, Ireland, like you'll notice that there's a lot of companies over there that purely operate off the definition of their legal terms on how they transact with you as the customer. So think of all of those like 10-day loan shark opportunities. The only way that they get away with a business like that is because their legal documentation is rock solid. That's how you need to think about your business as well, or anybody does, is you need to create legal documentation that clearly stipulates where you said you're going to start and where you're going to end, so that there's never any loss of expectation or feature creep. And where the minute that somebody's like, oh, I thought you were doing this, it's like we can do that. But as you can see stated here, it's not in the offer that you paid for, but we're happy to do it. And I can send you through the invoice. And what you'll find is by putting paywalls up, you incentivize people to behave the way that you intended to. So we see a lot of people, their whole business breaks down just because they don't have contracts that clearly stipulate where the start and the end of the engagement is.
How can you elegantly convey that back to a client without kind of jeopardizing the relationship?
Well, it's less about the ones that maybe you've tainted and going, okay, how do we prevent this situation ever from happening again? And it's getting to a point where you've got an itemized breakdown where if phase one in the process of helping them out is like a PDF. It's like you'll get a PDF that's 20 to 25 pages long that has these 7 sections in it, and these 7 sections have these in it. That way, when they receive that, it is very obvious that they've received exactly that, and now you're done. So instead of vaguely pointing somebody in a direction of, we're going to set your podcast up, it's literally doing an itemized breakdown like it's a IKEA step-by-step assembly instruction.
Because I think for our podcast, that's been very easy to do. Because for me, like, there's only like 4 or 5 points, and it's fine. It's within a vertical, because it's like a machine we set up. But with the offers we build on the back of clients, so we'd build a lot of their coaching programs or whatever, insert business model, that can get a little bit hairy, because like, let's say we're creating a VSL and the guy was meant to create the VSL, but then it needs to be edited, and then it's like, fuck, if we don't edit it, it's going to be shit, and then we have to bring that in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't mind editing it, because like our editors are dialed, but it's still just a concept of like, ooh.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's where the contract has conditional logic. So it's like, we'll produce the VSL for you and like give you the guidelines for it. If you want us to edit it, here's the consequence of that. If you don't want us to edit it, here's the consequence. You'll have to do that. So you have to get to the point where there's a conditional logic framework for every way that a client could transact with you. That's the only way to prevent that, because then you can just be like, and this is what happens in law. It's like, if you refer to 8.2, what you'll find is that you agreed to this particular clause. Therefore, there is no argument, because it's already been documented.
I think where this becomes a slippery slope is that nothing is a problem until it's a massive problem, is because people are trying to get people on contracts or recurring payments with very little documentation, very little outlining the offer, just the basics and the high level stuff.
Yeah.
That when things get into this murky water scenario, which will have a negative impact overall on the project or the process, that's an issue. Now, I want to ask you on that about reoccurring versus project work. So I've just never even thought about project work. I've always done reoccurring work. Do you think design is more situated towards project work? And the reason why I ask you is because we have someone in our program. He's a web developer, web design mainly. And he's 19, and he was probably charging like 3,000, 5,000 to do the design. And he said, oh yeah, it was just one-off payment. And I was like, dude, why don't we just swap to a reoccurring 1,500 or 2K, and then you can do other stuff for them too, like their landing pages and whatnot. And he was like, no, it wouldn't work. And I was like, why don't you just try it with someone coming in? And within a week, he was able to get a guy on a 4.5K reoccurring every month. And before it would be 4.5K, and that would be it. Be done. So it's like finding new ways to provide value for the same person.
Yeah.
But do you think that is missing in the design space and basically in all the spaces?
Well, that's just a perfect example of like taking something from the software space and applying it. Well, the best thing anybody can do is just figure out, and the best operating system for anybody that runs any business is to forget what you're selling. It doesn't matter. Figure out and try to, subject yourself to as many different business models and try to pull something out of them that makes sense for you. That's where all the innovation is. So, like, the best way to think about it is if you're a barber, or if you're a design business owner, or if you're a podcaster, the best sales training is going to come from the best salesperson on the planet, not the best podcasting salesperson.
Such a good point, dude.
Yeah, like
Such a good point.
The best way to think about building a product suite from low to high ticket, the best person to mimic is Apple. That's when it comes to reoccurring subscriptions, how do you maintain a relationship with a customer so that they keep spending money? It's going to SaaS software, right? The future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And the job of the entrepreneur is to figure out what mechanically works, subjectively
Dude, we
and
think the
embed
exact
it
same.
into your business. Like, and that's
Yeah.
this to me is just blatantly obvious. But what happens is identities get in the way, and I'm a podcaster, or I'm a designer, or I'm a life coach. Then they're like, well, this is how these people behave, and that's not how I think you should think about it. I think you should just think about it. My responsibility is to create market value so that I build generational wealth. That's how I think about it. What mechanics exist in the world so that when somebody knows something like podcasting, it's like, sick. Let's go speak to this guy and let's suck him for all the intellectual property that he's got and see how we can use it. Irrespective of whoever you are. Because there's something that's working.
Yeah.
Right? You're in Bali. Here. We're both at a mastermind. He's doing something that I'm not doing, or he has a perspective that I don't have. And it doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter if you're selling fucking fidget spinners. It's understanding mechanically what you've got working and how I can potentially trade what's working for me with you so that both of our base IPs expand by 2%.
And I learned that from James from Australia. I forget his surname. I think you were talking about this too, which is vertical integration.
Yep.
And because for me, this is where, again, you have to let the ego go. You know, I was pretty young to do a good offer, so I kind of felt like, oh, fuck it, I just have it all figured out, just do one thing, Sam Ovens, bang your head off the table. But what I've been learning is that, again, there's different ways to solve the same problem.
Yeah.
Depending on access, depending on cash, and that's what James is doing really, really well. Like, he's like 4 or 5 different things, but they're in difficult areas. But the last piece of the puzzle is the Apple approach, which is software.
Yeah.
And I come from a software background, right? So I have like I have a place in my heart for a software company.
Totally.
And it's just something that I've always wanted to do because it's so hard to get right.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's like, dude, like one thing wrong with the feature, as you know from design, the whole thing's a shit show. So the reason why I'm saying this is because when you have dominance in an area like design or a podcast, and not like, like you're a key person of influence in a specific niche, then at that point you can add in all these different things. So even last night, and to this day, I don't know what it is, but I know that a play I want to do is a SaaS platform that all of my clients and members can use.
Yeah.
And it can be sold externally.
Yeah.
So let's just give a simple example. Let's say it's just managing your podcast, whatever that means. People externally can come in for $29 a month, but then people internally can use it at $9 a month.
Yeah.
And then it's just this massive ecosystem play.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%.
And dude, like
that to me is the logical path everybody should go down. Is like if you think about every piece of software that you use has a grievance based on your individual context. Like every popular software platform is a compromise between the collective user base.
Explain that.
Well, like ActiveCampaign for me is an incredible tool, but there's things about it that annoy me based on the nature of who I email, how often I email them, and what I email them with.
Okay.
ActiveCampaign is looking at 10 people in the market and going, they all kind of use email a tad different, but let's see where they overlap, and that's our product. Whereas what I think will happen in the future is, I don't know if you've seen that graph, but the amount of people to run $1 million worth of revenue in an organization has gone from 9 in 1971 to 3 now.
Oh, the amount of people.
Yeah, the amount of people to generate $1 million of revenue. If that continues on the curve that AI kind of represents, then we hit an inflection point where you're just going to tell ChatGPT how to build that software, and now you've eliminated all of the risk of creating it. So the competitive advantage to the piece of software is the fact that you understand the context of how to use that software for your exact audience with no compromises.
Bear in mind, that's what everyone gets wrong in the software world. So most guys get in the software world because of the opportunity. So I come from a finance, fintech background, and obviously digital payments has been huge in the past 10 years. But no one knows, even me who worked there, how complicated the back end is. I won't bore you, but I'm trying to give you an example.
Yeah.
There's custodians, there's transaction times, there's layover times, there's transaction fees. There's all these nuances.
It's deceptively clunky.
Oh,
People
but
don't understand how...
It's 200 years of a financial system, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And to simplify, it breaks this regulation, that compliance, that regulation, that law, right? So the laws are set up deliberately to protect the user, even though they're slow and clunky, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because the amount of people that get into that space because they see the big opportunity of Cash App and Revolut, and then 20 minutes down the line, they're like, what the fuck is going on? So I built a trading platform, bear in mind. Trading, you're big into investing, right? The back end of trading, what's going on between ping, this bank, that bank, is wild, bro.
Yeah.
It's honestly the most wildest shit ever. We had actuaries working on the back end just to understand what was going on. It was like the most wild shit ever. Anyway, the reason I'm saying this is because most entrepreneurs are building things that they don't even know about. And you really see that in the service side. People sell services that they don't know about, like ads and niches. But it becomes such a different ballgame when you've taken someone's money, you've invested it, you spent 9 months building a roadmap, you don't even know how to market.
Yeah.
So you've got everything wrong. Not even one thing. You've got everything wrong, and you own 8% of the business.
Yeah. the funny thing, the perfect like example with that is people will look at that like they'll look at Revolut and be like, oh, what's the market cap that Revolut are going towards? Let's go into that market and let's do something. But they obviously don't see the back end complexity of it. Everybody that's absolutely murdered starts by just solving a stupid, dumb one problem. So PayPal's whole ethos at the start was to figure out how to get eBay super sellers transacting more efficiently. Because if you go back to when the start of the originations of PayPal, think about how money was transacted if you were selling stuff on eBay back in, I don't know what year it was, like early 2000s. That's a very clunky process. So they focused just on reducing the amount of time that super sellers were using, because you might do 15 transactions a day. That's 8 hours of transaction processing, you know? So they solved a very minute problem that just happened to have the mechanics that led into a mass market product. But I think the exciting thing is coming back to like your software idea. We're approaching the point that we'll all be able to create software at home. And I think AI eventually will converge on this space where there'll only be one thing left to do, and that'll be the person that determines the taste of a business. Is there a product that we can create with a following that we can put it in front of where they're going to be like, yeah, we'll swap money for that? That'll be the last role. And that's why anybody that's entrepreneurially minded is set up for a pretty incredible future, I would say. But yeah, like all of the barriers right now with software are personnel and intellectual property barriers, but AI is ironing those out.
You talk about IP a lot.
Yeah.
Talk me through the concept, like what you're thinking with that, because I don't think people really understand even the context of how you're describing it.
Yeah, so everybody has intellectual property. It's basically it's what they have that allows them to mechanically get a desired outcome for themselves that could be massively valuable if in the hands of somebody else. So let's think about everything. Let's just consider us both laptops, right? You're sitting here with 330 megabytes worth of success formula for how to build a marketing company that offers done-for-you services, right? I'm sitting here with 270 megabytes around how to build a design business and run ads to a coaching program. We both mutually benefit if we just take your 330 megabytes and put it in my laptop, and vice versa. We now have 600 megabytes worth of intellectual property. So basically intellectual property is just how you think about doing something that creates a desired result. Well, and what you'll find is like intellectual property is it's basically the most profitable thing to sell on the planet as well. So if you have a look at that MacBook in front of you, the reason that Apple are basically the most successful product company on the planet is because the gap between what it costs to produce the laptop and what they can sell it for at retail is the most aggressive multiplier versus cost. So if you've got the cost and the profit, their multiplier is more aggressive than anybody on the planet. So it might be $200 more to produce that MacBook, but they can charge $1,500 more than a Lenovo, right? What creates the gap between the cost and the retail value is intellectual property. It's not hard work. It's just knowing what formation to put the aluminium in, how to create the user experience, the tactile feel of the buttons. It's their own interpretation on what they think is the most effective formula and combination. So the way I see it is that everybody's got intellectual property. Everybody, like literally everybody. And your only responsibility is to figure out, what does somebody know that you don't?
Sequencing.
Yeah. And be like, well, how is that relevant to my space? And that's the danger in hanging out in just, if you're just hanging out with podcasters, is that you reach a market cap of IP in the podcasting space that maybe gets to 100 megabytes, but in the total addressable marketplace of IP in every industry, there's 100 tetrabytes.
Fuck, dude.
How are you, like, the reason that so many successful people came from PayPal is because all of those guys bought IP, and then they sat there in a very communicatable, high level of like information data swapping environment for multiple years that it allowed them all to completely change their world perspective around what was possible and how to leverage ideas and technology. And that's how they all branched out and moved in. So they all came in super smart people, but they 10x their hard drive with IP, and then they've all gone off and built billion-dollar companies. So that I feel like the real game is to just exist in the world that you want to exist in, and do exactly what you want to do, and then you'll run across people that are on similar paths, and then you just trade IP.
And that's like the beauty of like the Do you want to launch a podcast for your business, but you don't know where to start? Remove the stress, pressure, and all the overwhelm that comes with it by working with Podcast University. If you're an ambitious individual who wants to build your influence online, grow your own podcast, and also stand out from the crowd, Podcast University is for you. We help you with the strategy, equipment, the content, your guests, everything you need to create a top-tier podcast. If you want to learn more, check out Podcast University and start your podcast journey today. Game whereby you're constantly evolving within your own niche, and then you're just rising continuously by just not leaving the market. The most people shit their pants, lose their mind, and run in the other direction when an agency isn't working, when coaching's not working, which is all bullshit, right?
Yeah.
The problem isn't the model, the problem is you, right? To some degree. But that's actually why podcast as an example is really good, because if I didn't have my show, I wouldn't be meeting people in these settings and learning those data sets and small nuances. And yes, I might not action every piece of advice immediately, otherwise I would have 15,000 different businesses. But it's about learning the small things, the tremors from them, and then making a difference. So when I met James Kemp, when he was sitting in the right seat that you were in, he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "We run a $5,000 a month reoccurring payment done for you service." And he was like, "What do you do?" I was like, "We coach them, we teach them, we do things, we build things." He was like, "Could you just unbundle it?" And I was like, "Yeah." That's literally what happened. He was like, "Could you do that?" And I was like, he was like, "Would people pay for the strategy stuff?" I was like, "That's 90% of it." Yeah. Genuinely. Because like, have you ever read Category of One? Yeah. You know, he mentions that everything is a commodity. So because everything's a commodity, what we do is also a commodity, that the value of what we're doing is actually not in the execution, it's in the coaching and the more strategy side of things, the alignment with the business. So now we were just able to extract that component and then bring it down. So that's part of the IP, but that's also part of the leverage. And that's where you see people like the PayPal bros, PayPal mafia, isn't it? They're all playing those games of huge leverage.
Yeah.
And I want to get your thoughts on that too, because I know those guys, like, you know, the guys from NVIDIA, he spent 25 years, right, trying to figure out the business, and now 25 years later, they're doing like a 4 billion and a quarter or whatever. But at the same time, is that the game that you want to be playing, right? Because obviously there's lots of leverage in that, but is that a game that you're willing to play versus what you're doing, which is you want to go kind of smaller scale, but then higher rev and whatnot, but it's much more aligned to your values of your family, your friends, playing golf on Thursdays.
Well, that's the whole game. Is you can't do anything but benefit from learning chess moves or like poker moves on a table that's a higher cash game. If you're familiar with how poker tournaments work, right? If you're learning what the number one poker player on the planet is doing on the high stakes table, at least knowing that can put you in good stead for a move that is similar to that in the future. So if you're maximizing your acquisition of IP on one directive, it then infers that it should be easier to solve the problems that you currently face based on the way that you're currently constraining where you invest time. So for me, it's like figure out, like we were discussing, exactly what I want my week to look like with no like concessions or sacrifices, then engineer what the long-term business mechanism goal is in 30 years and go, okay, that's the problem.
What is that for you?
Do you mean like number-wise?
Number, lifestyle, like, because you have to think with the end in mind, right? Back to the 48 laws of power.
Yeah.
So we're reverse engineering this. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, that looks like owning property in 3 different countries and getting myself to the point that I'm about $3.5 million a year passive.
And
so basically just $3.5 million dollars a year that comes from my investments, not from my cash flow businesses.
What are you investing in? Just property? Is that
property, stocks,
dividends, everything,
and then cash flow businesses in the future. So
not something you want to invest in. You want to invest in cash flow businesses or hire CEOs.
Build them myself.
Yeah.
Based on where I see opportunity, but then also open up the opportunity for the people that we help to invest into theirs and become part owners as well.
Are you familiar with Serge Gatari?
No.
Such a fucking cool dude. He's like 23, 24 from Rwanda, moved to Canada. He's living in this massive penthouse in Montreal, brand new Porsche. Such a cool dude, but super down to earth, right? Super down to earth. But he's 23, he's doing 600K a month.
Wow.
And I was like, what's the mechanism for that? Like, what's the philosophy around it? And he was like, very simple. He was like, I wasn't studying the 10K a month bros, the 100K a month bros. I was studying NVIDIA, Apple, all these bigger companies, like really understanding their inner game to the point that their approaches, and this just kind of completes the circle, was that instead of getting people on a retainer or getting people on a paid in full, his approach was we want to build the infrastructure for sales, operations, marketing, and something else within companies. And we'll do that one-off 25, 30K.
Yeah.
And then if it's going well, we'll partner on you. If you're doing, I think it's over $500,000 a year, we'll partner with you for 20% or whatever, and then ramp all these systems and then let it run. And then you don't give a shit that you're paying about 20% because now you're making $1 million, or 2 million, or 3 million. And that's what allowed him to play that kind of bigger game.
Yeah.
Now, he went through all the evolutions of churn and burn and da-da-da. So I just thought it was super interesting because it's the same philosophy that you're talking about, thinking about building in those components of leverage.
Yeah.
And he's doing that as like a 23-year-old kid.
Yeah.
When he started, I'm not too sure what age he is now. So he's still super young, but.
And then that's just the simple idea of you can do so much yourself, but if you can have a 20% cut of 100 people that are all pursuing the path that you're pursuing, that's going to have, by an order of magnitude, impact on your net worth. And like, if you look at like Alex Hormozi, that's all he's doing. Acquisition.com is basically a mastermind that they don't charge for. They just take equity.
Also like a family office,
Yeah.
basically.
So all his whole strategy, like that's why he'll be worth easily $1 billion, is it's free information to help people get to 3 million a year. And then the once they've got to that point and people are grateful for his help getting them there, they give him 20% of their business to grow it to 10, 20, $50 million a year. That's his whole model, is understanding that he can only grow a business itself to maybe 100 million max. But if you can get 1,000 people to get to 50 million and get 20% cut of that, that is considerably easier.
Even better than that. So, you pay for speed, right? Have you seen his workshops?
No.
I was going to do one in Vegas. You should do one.
Yeah.
If you're going to be in Vegas for a week or two. They're in Vegas.
Oh, you can do workshops there.
So I'll give you some context. So, you mentioned that he's getting people to 3 million a year so you can invest in them. He's a smart cookie and realized that most people don't take advice, right? So now he has a new model, a new offer, which is if you're doing around $1 million a year, you can go to Vegas for a 2-day workshop, and all the acquisition.com team will be there to help you promote it, help you build your offer specifically on round tables, like 50 people.
Wow.
And then Alayla and Alex will come in for a talk on the last day. So what that is giving you more help. It's $5,000, which is super cheap, to be honest.
That's nothing.
And then they're putting you in their CRM. I got to tell you the story about that in a second, but they'll put you in a CRM, and now they're seeing you evolve to get to the point whereby it's like a football academy team.
Yeah.
They're finding the good people, and then they're seeing, like, one, you're not a dumbass, and then two, the business is good, so we'll help you in exchange for money until you get to that point, and we'll prime you.
Yep.
Okay? So how I figured out about it was in like one of his links. It was like a new link. I was like, that's kind of weird in his video. So Saturday night, I was here. It was late. It was probably around 1 a.m. And I saw the link and I saw the workshop. And I was like, fuck, I'm going to the US soon. Let me just sign up.
Yeah.
I signed up, put in my details. Within 1 minute, I had a missed call.
Wow.
Saturday night here in Vegas, it was super early in the morning. It was probably around 8 a.m. Saturday morning. And he's always talking about speed to lead and calling back your leads within 2 minutes. Had a call from a guy, had a WhatsApp message. And I just responded going, wow, I can show you the message, bro. I sent it into a group chat being like, this is the difference between the guys at the top and the guys in the middle, right?
100%.
And so because I was so amazed by it, I would never ring someone in my entire life. I rang him immediately back. And I was like, dude, that was sick. I literally was like, that was sick. And he's like, oh, time with the business. And then we were at the stage, so you're over 7 figures to do it. But it didn't work out for me because I'm not in Vegas for the same weekend, but they're doing it every like 2 weeks.
Oh man,
pretty much now.
Yeah, I'm 100% going to do that.
Yeah, so I can give you the details.
That'd be awesome.
I'll actually give you the details of the sales rep guy.
Yep.
Because we actually got on really well, and I was like, I can do it. I'm just not going to be there. That's the difference, you know.
Yeah,
and he's like, all right, cool. Because I had the tour planned out, and we're like super tight on schedules.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, maybe there's a day or two, and then we were like, whatever, I'll come back to it. Keep me in a CRM. You know, so I just thought that was super interesting because like that's when you evolve with someone. We go back to the outcome versus the input. They're putting you on this scaler, you know.
Yeah. That's incredible, and like I mean that's. See, probably they're probably thinking, okay, well, $5,000 ticket, that might break even, but if we take 5,000 people through that over the next X amount of years and 100 of them pop. That's going to be amazing. And
it's also free marketing. He didn't put a cent into that.
Yeah, that's
the
amazing.
First link in his videos.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that's... If you want to go back, I'd be keen to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's only, couple day workshop is it?
It's on the weekend, every second weekend, I think, in Vegas.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so they fill it pretty quickly, but I know the guy pretty well, so you're back and forth for quite some time. And...
I'll try to squeeze it around my bucks party.
Yeah,
guys will be back in 8 hours.
But I think this is the beauty of these things is that you don't need to do all of it, right? You don't need to go to the dinners and shit.
Yeah,
you can just go in the morning, because that's what I was going to do with James, because we were super busy at the time. And I was like, oh, hey, dude, like I can just go to the things during the day. And he was like, all right, cool, you know.
Yeah.
So you kind of ebb and flow and See what works for you too, right? At the same time.
Yeah, totally.
But if it's not this time, you can come back to it. That's the whole thing with this
Yeah.
stuff. And that's where we go back to, again, not shoving it, not burning a lead, right?
Yeah.
Is that for me, in that scenario, this is a really good thing to reflect on. So the guy rang me, I got on the call, I was keen, but I wasn't able to do it, just from a logical perspective. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to do it or that I won't do it in the future. And
Yeah.
he was pretty chill about
We're
it.
talking about it now.
You know,
Yeah.
literally. So the fact
it's on the way.
that he didn't burn it,
Yeah.
and I just actually wasn't able to do it, and I wouldn't be wasting someone's time unless I knew I was like 90% in.
Yeah.
That's the way you set up the ecosystem,
Totally.
right? That is the ecosystem play. And now, because I didn't have a negative experience through the sales process, I'll buy the third book when it drops in September or
Yeah.
whatever. Do you get me?
Yeah.
And then that'll put me on the next back on the conveyor
Yeah,
belt,
yeah.
you know. But that's how I'll end up spending a ton of money with them over the next couple of years as they build more stuff, and then maybe one day they could come in and do something cool with us.
Yeah. And that's it's 100 times easier to have that attitude when you don't need any of the next 10 sales opportunities to close. So
True.
I still obviously do the sales calls in my design business, but with Profitable Designer, we've got a beast of a girl in Ecuador named Sophie. And the busier the month that we have and the more revenue we do, the greater her conversion rate, because she's mentally passed her goal and quota for the month. And now everything's just, it's like, we're kind of busy this month, and it's less, it nearly is like she's repelling the sale.
Yeah.
And that was the good thing about like James's attitude is when you engineer the weekly recurring, you reduce the need for anybody to individually close, which then that's actually the most optimal way to continue a long-term relationship. So like you're saying here is like, you weren't ready, and that there's a lot of like scale bros that would have called a minute later and got that part right, but then they would have really pressed for the sale then, and then you would have been like, well, fuck those guys forever. And now you're like, you called them back, and it's like, yeah, if now's not the right time, awesome. And now it probably increases the likelihood that you go back by 15%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
It's a delicate balance, though.
yeah, massively.
Very, very delicate balance, and I've seen it.
But the other thing is they don't need you.
Exactly.
Yeah, they know their numbers, and they know that obviously out of X amount of people we call, that massively changed our sales process as well. So we use Alloware, and we call the minute people book for a call, we call them straight away.
Automated.
Yeah, it automatically dials. Sophie jumps on and goes, super excited to chat to you in the next couple of days. Are you free now? And
Is it a voicemail?
no, person
But where is she?
in Ecuador.
But how, what if her phone's not with her?
She is. Like it's during her window.
Okay.
If the call booking comes through, which 80% of them do,
Okay.
it'll Allaware will just go, oh, we're going to dial this person.
And it will ring her phone too.
Yeah, yeah. And then she knows, okay, awesome. And then she can bring up the information. And what she does is, a lot of the times she runs the triage call right then and there when they book, so that we can move them straight to a discovery instead of triaging and then discovery.
Well, I don't do any triage call.
We do it just because of the call volume to protect her time, because we don't want her spending an hour with somebody that we could have identified in 5 minutes wasn't qualified, if that makes sense.
Would you not do that through an application form or a Calendly form?
Yeah, there's a difference between what people fill out in a form and what they actually say when you question them.
Yeah.
So we do this kind of like, and it's in everybody's best interest to figure out. She does this thing called Open Wallet, and she just runs the sales process. I don't stay up to date with it, because when she closes 60% of people, you don't need to worry about what's happening. It's not broken, right? But she does this thing called Open Wallet, and she's like, yeah, to be blatantly upfront, like, this is what it costs. If that's okay, then fantastic. if it's 50-50, we can obviously discuss like if this is something that makes sense for you. Because if it's not, we want to push you in the right direction and say to you that maybe now's not the right time for the call, if that makes sense.
The other approach to that would be you'd build commitment, buy into the process, they're 100% into the process, and then reveal the investment, and then people will make it work. Do you get me? That's the other logic to that.
Yeah. But what happens is, as long as people come back and say, I'm open to it, then the call can progress.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and the process might be completely different if we only had 20 calls a month, but when we've got like 70, like we don't want.
It's a lot.
We like I don't know how she does it, but like my brain turns to mush when I had 3 calls in a day.
So how much revenue do you do in a month?
We do between probably 160 and 300 grand a month.
Fuck.
Yeah.
What's the margin on that?
Probably 75. Yeah. My biggest cost is the sales and the setting team. Yeah.
Because it's commission only?
Commission. Yeah.
All commission only?
Yeah. And then.
But that's not a cost though.
No, it's not. That's the price you pay to get the money.
Yeah, it's the price you pay. Yeah, it's only the sale price minus the ads minus the commission.
Yeah, but the ads, but that's not taking into account the low ticket product sales, which pay for the ads as well. So ads not even in that. So yeah, so it kind of it rotates between that. It's like it swings. Yeah. It swings pretty aggressively.
What do you mean? So why would it swing?
You just get in tranches, and this is half of the reason that the model has to be rebuilt, because you do nothing but boost posts on Instagram, for example, for 3 months, and it can be the same post over 90 days, and then everything else in the business is constant. And there can still be a fluctuation of 100% in the monthly revenue.
I don't get it.
We can boost a particular post that calls out a type of designer in March, which we did, and do 300 grand in March, and then not change anything in April and May. And then it goes 300, 150, 220. You know what I mean? And it's just relative to... We're relying on one algorithm and where it puts that, and kind of seasonal difference in, people that go through different buying cycles halfway through the year. The end of the year has been historically good for us because, people have that, I assume, this new year, new business kind of mentality, and they want to start fresh. So you go through that, but yeah, like it's pretty unpredictable, and that's half the reason is you can't rely purely on one thing. And that's the great thing about content, is that the base is slower to build, but you know how many views and clicks you're going to get next month, you know what I mean, that are hyper qualified. Whereas if you rely on running ads, you don't know, like Instagram and Meta's business model changes every day. They've gone from, and as you can imagine, remember when like people getting locked out of their account and banned became so common that people were selling training programs on how to get unlocked and unbanned, right? Well, now we've gone through this complete cycle where less people are spending money on Meta, and now it's impossible to get banned. And now an agent from Meta will ring you and ask if you need any help. So it's like completely done a 180, right? Well, all of those changes and market shifts also mean that they have to continually innovate the way that they figure out how to most effectively allocate somebody's ad spend, so it's too much of a unpredictable cycle, and that's why there has to be rebuilding so that we can better and more predictably monetize the email base.
Yeah, and I think rebuilding may be the wrong word. It could be just innovating.
It is just innovating.
Rebuilding is like my life fell apart and now I have to start a new business. That's the.
But I also like that notion of it. I like that idea of like it's always fun to build something new and start fresh again. So I see it more as like have you ever, like when you move overseas, for example, did you do like a mass cull of all the shit in your house? And how medicinal that cleanse was to get rid of all of that stuff. Like we shipped our it cost me, during COVID, it cost me £6,500 to ship our stuff from the UK to Australia, because we thought we were moving back to Australia. There wasn't even 6.5 grand worth of stuff in the container. It was the worst move of my life. But then we're like, fuck it, let's just sell it all. And it was the most liberating thing, because now we were just backpacks and our travel bags. Well, I like doing those system resets. I reset my MacBook every 2 months. I just wipe the hard drive and then clean up the Google Drive folder. I like starting from scratch. It's like
That's
a nice
simplicity.
space. Yeah.
You familiar with J.K. Molina? Are you an entrepreneur who wants to build your influence and authority online? You may have tried some of the hacks and tricks, but none of it has worked. And it makes sense. 90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 3. Of the 10% that are left, 90% of them don't make it to episode 20. That's where Voix comes in. Voix creates, manages, and grows your podcast for you on your behalf. If you've not been getting leads, not been growing consistently, you haven't found your tribe, and you don't know what to do, Voix is the answer. Don't just take our word for it. In the past couple of years, we've managed over 35 podcasts. We've also been able to generate over 55 million views with 500 episodes produced. And not only that, generating over $1 million for our clients in products, services, and sponsorships. So if you want to learn more about how you can build a great podcast and have it fully managed for you, schedule a call with me at Voix and we will help you achieve your podcast goals.
No.
You're not in James's program, are you? James Kemp's program?
I was for a couple of months.
Okay.
But it worked so well, and I was like, I'll come back and hopefully get private coaching, when I want to do a couple of problems in 6 months.
So JK was in James's group, and this guy's from Guatemala. Like, he's a killer. He's like 21, 22. He had a ghostwriting agency, grew that. Then he had Tweet Hunter. You know Tweet Hunter? He came in with the guys Tebow. They sold it for 1.4 mil. He got a good bit of cash from that. And then he was helping consultants, coaches, like add 20K to their business. And he had like 14 people, 150K a month, very small margin. And that's when he met JK or James. And he went down to him and a VA, but rebuilt, went back to not zero, but all the way down to rebuild. And James Kemp brought him back up to 100K with like 99% margin.
Wow.
Literally. And then the VA is just based in like, where is he? He's in Canada, I think.
Yeah.
No sales team, nothing. And it's the same offer, just through that. And to be honest, dude, like I've learned a lot from James on that too. So the reason I'm saying I'm not using the word rebuilding is because it's just I look at it as a
uses
better
everything
product.
that you've done.
Yeah.
But it's like a reformatting.
But I also think though that one person like Google Doc thing works best if you've been through the wars of business. If you understand the triggers. I'm going to give an example. We do paid sponsorships, and we never really take calls from ever. People will come in, a tech company will come in, they'll do a sponsorship and whatnot. But if we're doing something that's a little bit higher level, like a kind of a bundle, like a newsletter and webinars and so on, sponsorship, we may have to take calls for that. Because of James, I was thinking like, all right, let's just, when they ask for a call, just ask them to send out their questions and I'll get back to them. But when they're sending the questions, I'm talking to them as if it's a sales call via message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
But the only reason I'm doing it is not because I'm fucking socially anxious and I want to go sales call. It's just because we can solve the problem now instead of waiting until next Thursday at 4 p.m.
Totally.
So, but what I'm trying to say is that because I understand human behavior from sitting on a call with all these people and just understanding sales processes, it's easier to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting to tell James, actually, we're waiting for a payment to go through, which was 28,000 USD.
Sick.
It's for a client, like, but it's 28,000, and it was done through an email.
Yeah, and you are right. Like, one thing you've always got to be like this, like just the same way there's like laws of gravity, that there's laws to marketing, and using the Google Doc template to sell other people on using the Google Doc template is the most optimal environment for that mechanism to work.
Yeah.
Like the inception of it, right? So like that's like the speed of light.
Yeah.
And it's like, how close can you get to the speed of light? Because we could right now use Telegram as a landing page funnel to get clients and use Telegram as the landing page for that offer. And it'd probably work. Or no, it's more likely to work because the proof's in the pudding. You know what I mean? You're proving the mechanism works because you're using the mechanism to prove the mechanism works.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
That can be taken out of context though. So I mentioned to you before, like if you're teaching people how to make 10K a month, but you're only making 10K a month because they're buying your program.
Yeah.
That's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, that's a pyramid scheme. But that's the funny thing is that's what it seems like the vast majority of the market are doing. And what I find is the people that it just comes down to like the best person that you can invest off has the experience before the business model, the new business model. So I think those people are easier to spot because they share revenue numbers. I think the more that you show revenue numbers, the more likely that you're running the inception game. Whereas if you're less showing revenue numbers and you're talking more about problems and challenges, that person to me is more genuine.
100%.
So like James very rarely shares revenue numbers unless they're in a hyper level of context. But then you see these like Instagram content creators where it's just pure inception. Here's the money I'm generating selling the course, which is the only thing that I've done. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like you can make money doing that. But the problem is that the only person that's going to make money buying that course is somebody selling that same course to other people on Instagram. You're not going to be able to take that training and apply it somewhere else because it hasn't been proven in a real non-inception market environment. Does that make sense?
100%.
So like that's why our stuff works, is because it works outside of the mechanisms that I use to sell it.
Dude, I said this to you on Voice the other day, which is what you're sharing to do with the design businesses and design industry is applicable to other businesses, just like what we're doing to help podcasts become businesses are applicable to any other form of content.
Yeah.
Tweets, even ads to some degree, same logic, LinkedIn, newsletters, whatever. It's the same logic. So it's the same vetted principles across a multitude of different domains.
Yeah.
And you're having that strong foundation principle level and you just pick a vessel. It literally goes back to the most basic shit ever, which is like pick a niche and go after the niche with the same principles.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's where the specialization is. So we're looking at that screen there, right? Mm-hmm. And we want that screen to connect to the laptop, and that's kind of like the perfect version of your business model is that TV and you're the laptop. The job of the creator and the entrepreneur is to figure out the most effective cable to take the HDMI port to the RGB. So you're the converter. So it's like, yes, that they are the proven business principles, but based on the fact that I understand the HDMI port, I'm going to show you how we translate that information so that it's relevant to you. And that's that. In a way, that's kind of all an entrepreneur is somebody that's releasing a technology, and like IP and ideas are technologies.
Yep.
You're releasing a technology to a market that hasn't seen it before that would really benefit them if they could figure out how to embed it in their everyday.
Yeah, man. That's so fucking smart.
Yeah. What do you know about podcasting that most people don't?
Systems. Everyone's just chasing like big guest or the shiny object or the trick or the hack, but there is no hack. There's just a consistent, repeatable, difficult, grungy process that you just have to go through continuously, and it's almost like looking at it as like a feedback loop. So
Okay.
most guys are like, oh, I released this video, I got no views, but why not? Like, how do you debug something? How do you look at why it's not working? Is the title, thumbnail, show notes, intro, hook wrong? Like, where's the issues? Okay, next week we do another rep, and then how long are you willing to play the game? So I think the beautiful part because I come from a bodybuilding background, I literally can just record for the rest of my life and not expect anything because I know just how difficult it is to build a physique and make progress and go from 100 kilos on a bench to 105 kilos is like 6 months of training or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So I think having that infinite approach has been so much easier to build these systems and constantly iterate on them. And now it's just turnkey. We can either just integrate it with someone straight away and immediately get results, or teach someone to immediately get results through it.
Yeah.
So it's just a combination of that system, process, and then mainly the kind of philosophy behind it as well.
Okay. So it seems like you said like 90% of the value is kind of the strategy. Like at a level, anybody can produce a podcast. But the strategy becomes really important. So like what's the kind of, if somebody is in a lift with you and you've got a minute to go from level 50 down to level 1 and you've only got that minute to help them hit a podcast out of the park, what are the 2 or 3 things that you focus on and all of the shit that you neglect?
Just the content pillars. That's the only thing that's important. So there's no point, you can't grow something that's not ideally in a good position, right? This is what product market fit is. I call it podcast market fit. So if you're a design business, your content pillars are your personal experiences, what you've gone through the past 8 years, tactical guides, and then also like how-to framework. So your unique mechanism. That's your entire framework. From there, you can find guests, content ideas, post ideas. You can convert those post ideas into different things. But that entire structure, that work in the beginning, which can just be on Lucid chart, dude.
Yeah.
Just breaking out a small content pillar framework. And then all of these pillars feed into your products and services. And once you know you're living that alignment, whether you're working with someone like us or whether you're even looking at yourself, if you know you're going off and talking about relationships over here, it's outside of that framework. So you can't be upset with yourself if you're not growing or you're not making money because it's not in the framework.
Yeah.
You can, of course, add things in, but that's most important than anything else. And that's why people like Lex Friedman and Diary CEO and all these guys, they really focus on that initially, which was that philosophy. And then all the growth stuff is just something that happens. Whether you do it, a VA does it, or whatever, the clips may look like shit or whatnot, but if that structure is wrong, then we're growing the wrong thing. And the last piece of that is our framework is like strategy, growth is monetization, but it's an equation. It's strategy plus growth is the monetization. But if you take out one of them, you're falling apart. So if the strategy is dialed, but you're not growing it, well, then you're still not going to monetize it. If you're growing it, doing all this hooks and crap and all that shit, but the strategy is off, you're not going to monetize it. It's only when they're two in alignment. And that can be a 20-minute conversation on a whiteboard, or it can be a 4-day thing. I know some people in our program that just jumped up straight away. They did the whole thing in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Even me, I'm such a fail forward kind of guy. Just like fail forward, break it, fix it, whatever. So I just do it on the go. Whereas some people have spent 2 or 3 weeks devising it and fixing it and iterating it and getting approval and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But once that's dialed in, nothing else is important. It's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing. Because that goes like from inception to recording to producing to the business you're trying to sell or the product you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
You mentioned about reverse engineering the end goal from an ad.
Yeah.
Same shit.
Yeah, got it. So then from like a frequency, it kind of doesn't matter, and as long as it's consistent.
Yeah.
Like the consistency, it doesn't strike me that algorithms play a role as much. It's more the consistency creates a better podcast.
Well, consistency creates a better tribe because they're expecting it.
Yeah.
If I have a late release on a Wednesday, I'll have a bunch of DMs being like, where's the podcast? Because everyone knows that for the past 4 years, you'll get an episode from me every Wednesday.
Yeah, got it.
So it's it's the mental real estate you occupy in someone's brain.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking through the lens, which is more like an infinite game, you're less focused on trying to beat other people. So it's not about how many episodes you can produce. Like the amount of guys that were my friends in 2022 that tried to compete with me in 2023, that tried to play a finite game to an infinite problem, is hilarious, because a lot of them gave up. They were good and they gave up.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to like play this, I got to do more, got to do more, got to do more. Whereas like I've literally just been over here on my own. Like I don't compete with anyone. I'm going to do it this way, and this is the way that's going to generate results for us.
Yeah.
So a lot of the big guys that you see, they actually work with production houses, and so a lot of the biggest shows you see, they have work with a couple of houses, and smaller creators will join them, and they'll try to put a square peg through a circle hole. So we've had clients join us that were doing 9 episodes a month, and they were super burned out. They'll join us, and I'll cut it in half.
Yeah.
I'll get them to do 4 if they've been doing 8, and if they're doing 4, I might get them to do 2.
Yeah.
And then we'll just really dial 2 to 4 episodes a month, and then really focus on growing those and debugging those where they are or not working. If they are working, that's great. We can focus on that.
Yeah.
So it's less about scale or volume. So I'll give an example. I was thinking about doing the 3 episodes a month approach, Joe Rogan, Chris Williamson approach, 3 episodes a week approach.
Yeah.
And when I did it, I was just miserable. I never got to 3. I would get to 2. I would do 2, and it was always a hassle. And what happened was the unit economics didn't work out. We were getting less views and downloads per episode.
Yeah.
So it actually, people couldn't consume as fast as we were releasing.
Yeah.
And also people just didn't give a shit about it as much. So now we've just gone down to 5 to 6 a month.
Yeah.
And it's a nice sweet spot.
Okay. And so it's really the idea that you just want to put more quality into potentially 1 a week.
Yeah. That's a lot, dude. Like, that's a lot of stuff.
Is it?
Yeah, because you think about it, right? It's not like... The thing with a podcast is that if you're doing 1 a week, it's not just like you turn on the microphone and release and record. It's the fact that you have to think about the guests, find the guests, contact the guests, bring them into your ecosystem, book the time in, do the preparation, record, then produce, release, grow, and manage it from there.
Yeah.
So that 1 episode a week you see on Spotify has actually been 5, 10, 15 hours of continuous improvement and whatnot. And bear in mind that that's only process, that's input.
Yeah.
The outcome is still undefined. The output is there, one unit of productivity in 1 episode. But then the outcome is not there. So that's why a lot of guys will join us 7 years into their journey and be like, we're just moving sideways.
Yeah.
Because they've never actually tried to get better, you know?
Yeah,
and dude, like I put up a photo last night here, which was like a before and after of like us building the studio. That can be better, right? When we're in person, this episode will perform way better than recording remotely, because your room may not have the soundproofing that this room does. That's so small, but that could be what you're missing.
Yeah.
You know, so like, yes, we'll work on like debugging the content and the content structure and the pillars for sure. But at the same time, you could just be mixing a front light, genuinely, dude, or a backlight that will lead to a better retention on a clip that will lead to more views. And it could be as simple as that. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. We had a weekly call this week, and a lot of the guys don't want to talk about production too much. I don't like talking about production either. But I was sitting there being like, the reason why some of your episodes are not growing is literally because you're not changing angle between who's speaking, who's not speaking. You just have 2 people like this. I was like, dude, not going to lie, I'm 90% sure that's the reason why you're not growing. It's because the angle looks shit.
Interesting.
And I was like, dude, like it's as simple as that. Just fucking pay an editor to swap the angle so it has a bit more engagement.
So you definitely recommend, because the vast majority of my podcast content is just me talking.
I think you could get other guys that are like killers in the design space or pulling people across. I'll give you an example. So I told you I know Chris. With Chris Doe, they help design people become more logical with business, right? In doing that, he will bring in people that are personal brand guys like Jasmine Alec, who I know well, who's big on LinkedIn. He'll bring in sales guys like Chris Voss in negotiation that helps him with client contracts. And he'll bring in some other guys just on delivery, fulfillment, community building, and stuff like this. They don't know anything about design.
Yeah.
0. But those philosophies, like we talked about, are everything.
Yeah, totally.
So for you in that position, you could just connect with other people they have a good idea of design, or let's say their brand is kind of on point at least, you know, they're not just completely alien to it.
Yeah.
And then the nuance and the examples they give are relevant to your people.
Yeah, got
right?
it.
And that's why people that we work with sometimes, I like to say that like you kind of want to be one step out of the detail to really connect with a broader people. So I'll give you an example. We work with a lot of sales podcasts, a lot of guys in sales.
Yeah.
And the thing with sales is that the principles and practices and tactics and techniques they're largely familiar. You got cold calling, cold email, social media DMs for the most part, and got calls. Whereas a lot of guys will have specific examples for, let's say, B2B sales in a German market. And the guys get kind of lost in the nuance, right? They're like, oh, but I need to speak to this way. I'm like, no. Guys will discover you because you're sharing cold call techniques.
Yeah.
When they come and speak to you, or when they see the landing page, you can put the word B2B in there, German speaking only. But they have to connect with you first. But if you go down this rabbit hole of design businesses that are manufactured in Japan and Japan only, that's not Australia, who the fuck is in that? Because the problem with this is that you now have to find people to listen that like podcasts, which is small. And then you have to like design podcasts. And then design podcasts that are also based in Australia, also do e-com, and also do e-com in Japan.
Yeah.
There's like 8 people in Australia that do that.
Yeah, it's like layered Facebook targeting.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's the reason why you get 7 views. So if we took a step out of all of that and just focus on design principles, and then when they click on the landing page, your specialty is import-export.
Yeah, totally.
Not even to do with Japan and Australia, just import-export. Right? So it's just like we just flip the script, the positioning.
Yeah.
I think that's what I've been really focused on, even with my marketing, is that ideally we want to, in our Done For You offer, we want to work with people like tech companies, you know, HSBC, Standard Chartered, Salesforce. We want to work with those bigger guys. But we don't need to call them out and have there being like, are you in Salesforce and do this? We can just basically call up people that have podcasts that are ran as a marketing channel for their business. One person business, 15,000 people business. Same shit.
Yeah.
We're doing the same shit. Nothing changes. And that's where the podcast space got it wrong, because when people try to look at it as a marketing channel, they said, oh, it's B2B. And I was like, no. Yes, we can repurpose it as a blog and a newsletter and stuff, but you're still missing, again, go where the money's at.
Yeah.
There's people that just want to use a podcast as a vessel to make more money and connect to people. And there's it goes back to cash advertising. There's the intrinsic motivation and extrinsic. So the intrinsic is like social status, extrinsic is return on investment.
Yeah.
But you play that balance, right? And for me, taking fucking thousands of sales calls, I just understand what people want from a podcast.
Yeah, totally. Is there anything that you do with the way that you set up the structure of the delivery of somebody's episode to
100%.
optimize towards short form content and like repurposing? Or is that just, hey, let's just mine that 2 hours and see if there's stuff in it?
There's different ways to look at it. So one, we focus on video first. I said this to you before.
Yeah.
So a video first podcast gives you as much leverage as possible, because it's like a waterfall. If you focus on nailing a really strong video, that'll waterfall into audio, and then it'll waterfall into LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and then it can be rewritten as your newsletter.
Yeah.
Whereas if you focus on audio first, you're not going to have that ability, because audio first means that you're very restricted. You don't have that much levers. Now, in doing so with a great video, you can have good lighting, good setup, good like elegance around the video. And then we've already talked about the strategy being dialed in, and now it becomes how you show up and not be a potato on the internet. So how clear, succinct you are, the energy you bring into it. So almost like, how do we prime it like that without doing it as a vessel just for short form?
Yep.
Because my best self is literally sitting here and just talking.
Yeah.
Whereas when I try to do the talking head videos, the short form videos, even though I'm a good speaker,
you lose the magic.
I lose the magic, exactly.
Totally.
Whereas my zone of genius is like here, feeling comfortable with someone, telling them stories, telling them vice versa. And then all that kind of magic happens, and then that can be repurposed for short form and so on. But again, the goal of a podcast is not short form. The goal of the podcast is the podcast.
Yep.
And that's what most people get wrong, because they've seen the big boys getting 60,000 views a clip, and it's like, that wasn't the goal of the podcast.
Yeah.
The goal is the long form trust authority brand.
Yeah.
And the short form is the short form.
And that they just got so good at their long form that you can cut parts out of it.
Yeah, it's like going to the gym to train for a marathon. It's like, okay, being physically fit and healthy will help for marathon training, but my bench press does not mean I'm going to run better.
Yeah.
But because I was an athlete in the gym and a bodybuilder, I'm primed to probably run at a good level.
Yeah.
But it's like we're solving a problem with the wrong solution.
Yeah, got it.
And like anyone can view that as like stupid, but for some reason people care more about their short form versus their long form. You know, it's a weird thing. And then there's the other side of it then, which is like, what are you optimizing for? Like all the downstream effects of like revenue and leads and sales is a byproduct of like building a really good content system.
Yeah.
So if the content and the strategy and you're connecting with people and you genuinely give a fuck, this is the difference between long form and all other forms, is the fact that I can clearly see that you are passionate about building businesses from just sitting here. Like I know that's a passion of yours, and then design is a vessel that you've used to get there. And that's very true of when people come in. Like the majority of people that I meet through my podcast will always mention they understand my values, because I just like, I'm very, very dialed in terms of like what I believe and, you know, back to the worldview.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, back to the worldview. And that's evolved from me being a 24-year-old kid not having a clue what I'm doing to being 4 years later, you know?
Yeah.
But people can see that at an essence level. And I'm not making it up, because you can't make it up over 240 episodes, because the cracks would fester in.
Totally.
Whereas if I see someone's Lambo on their Instagram reel, I know it's manufactured.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
You know?
there's something that I discovered with my content, like, is like I can dramatically improve all of the content. Like I've always been of the idea that it's the ideas that you circulate that are really important. But I'm probably also understanding that there's a heap of optimizations around like my video stuff that would allow things to move to another level. So like, do you think it's better to, like, I just basically recorded in our spare bedroom in our villa.
Yeah.
But like, is it better to dedicate a day a month to come into here and produce it this way?
It's all about how you want to show up, right? It's like it makes sense for me to do this because we have a podcast business, and also I prefer to do this. But even my home setup is still super dialed. Like I have all these cameras, all the equipment and whatnot. But then you have someone like Charlie Morgan or William Brown who have these super raw videos, because there's a counterculture, right? For every trend, there's a counter trend.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Rory Sutherland about this for a very long time, which is like when you have AI, you have natural conversations. When you have bodybuilding, you have high rocks. Like there's always an ebb and flow. But it's all about where you want to situate yourself in that, you know? Because I guess to some degree take myself more seriously, I prefer that branded, designed look.
Yeah.
And it's just more of a natural flow to me. Like I feel like if I met a good guest and he was like, come to my house and we'll just record with some iPhones, I wouldn't feel as natural with that.
Yeah, totally.
Do you get me?
Yeah, 100%.
Even like we're going to the US soon, and I floated to a guy that we would do it in his house. It made me anxious because I was like, now I gotta, what if he's using tiles as a floor?
Yeah, totally.
And that for me then is at odds to the way that I want to show up.
Yeah.
And present just who I am. And not showcase bullshit, but it's just the way that what do I value?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like you could be...
It's more like, what do I think, what content am I comfortable producing? It's like, and it's like, it comes down to your root belief of what content should be. And like, I'm sure at a level like your biases are like, content should be well produced because I enjoy well produced content. You know what I mean? And like what I've found is, this is just my crackpot theory, and I might be completely wrong, but my space is over polished. So the minute that I come in with a grainy,
those raw videos on the whiteboard.
yeah, it's like something magical happens because it's so disruptive in nature. People are like, Christo is so polished, and it's like the best looking content ever, and it's super valuable.
But some of his videos aren't though, because he uses them from workshops.
Yeah, but
They use a wide angle. Do you get me?
But they're still like, but they're the most optimally produced based on the context.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Whereas up the other end, you've got Charlie Morgan, and I love both.
Yeah.
Like this Charlie, and what I love about Charlie Morgan's content is you're getting something that only a $10 million a year entrepreneur can tell you. You know what I mean? And I kind of like err more towards his way of thinking, because I think it's more about the IP than it is the presentation of the IP. And the other thing that I've noticed is I get people that come in who are like, they like get it. They're like, I get it. The polish as a designer is not the most important thing. It's the fundamentals under it. And I feel like really good content, it brings in people that their biases around things that don't have as much leverage, if that makes sense. In my market, personally.
No, you're right, man. And your customers are a reflection of you, right? So like, if you're telling people that it has to be super specific and perfect, well, it's the optics again, right? But you're optimizing for the wrong metric, whereas like someone like Charlie Morgan is optimizing for the content, because that's the vessel of how he got to where he is and how he can help you get to that point too, the same point, right? So it's like more of like a spectrum, you know. But again, this is the funny thing, is that with a lot of things in business, there's no right way. It's not ads versus content. It's not unpolished versus polished. It's about what way does Darren Lee want to show up, like in his truest form, which can be either, can be neither, can be hanging upside down from a tree, right? It's just whatever suits me best that I actually really enjoy. Yeah. Like after COVID, there was a big push to go into studios for podcasts. And we were one of the early people that like really nailed the video and long form. But at the same time, I didn't want to give up the reach I had online for getting any guests and so on and so forth. So I stayed in the online space still, but doing a nice marriage of the two, when most people wouldn't. And most people's podcasts never continued, because they tried to do in person, and they had to be in London or Dubai or Bali or Miami, and it just was not operationally, logistically works, right? Whereas for me, I can do 4 episodes in a week recording, month's content right there, and just do them all from my bedroom, you know?
Okay, so that was my next question. How do you deal with solving the challenge of not being face to face?
Yeah, it's just more so like how you show up. Is like a lot of these guys that I'm interviewing in particular are guys in the content space, so they know the game, you know, and especially they understand the content of like repurposing, like even giving you these files afterwards. Like I can obviously point you in the right direction of how to create them or use them, or what we actually do is we create content for guests sometimes. We do it in our program too. So we teach people how to create content for people to post about the content for their guests. So I'm interviewing people who are kind of I call it creator entrepreneurs, guys who create content as their main vessel for their business. But not like a creator. This could be a Chris Doe or Hormozi, Matt Gray, Justin Welsh. They're more creator entrepreneurs. So they're the guys that the content pops. And that can be remote or whatnot. So like I recorded 2 podcasts with Justin Welsh. You know Justin? Yeah. I know him well. And like the first one, you know, it was just like, hop on a call, Zoom call, whatever. But then the second one, we met in New York and we were sitting in like a lobby together, and we had a lot of similarities. Like he loves dogs. We love dogs with my partner. And we ended up, bear in mind, it's Justin Welsh, and we're spending 30 minutes talking about dogs.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
You know what I mean? And he's like known for all of this stuff, this business shit. And like, we're just literally talking about random dogs. He's like, I love this type of dog. And I'm like, same. And it's just so weird that wouldn't have happened remotely, but you can plant seeds remotely though, right? Yeah. Do you get me?
Yeah, totally.
So you can still do a lot of cool shit remotely.
It seems like the effort in person is way less. It just kind of rolls more. Because it like for me, like there's people that like I've jumped onto the call with to do a podcast, like a student that's done a really good job of, you know, closing their first 6-figure deal or reaching a milestone. Some people go into presentation mode. Some people just chat. We're just chatting.
Yeah, like we just if anything, I wouldn't have had a hit record button. It would just been recording already. We just come in like, oh, we start going.
Yeah, totally.
And like I've kind of went full 180 with that, like because I used to be like a retention whore, whereby like I had to have like a really good intro, a really good baseline, all this kind of stuff. Whereas now I kind of want to put people in their most relaxed seat, and then
Yeah.
intuitively have these things pop up, But again, it's nuanced though. I think the thing with your students, I checked out some of those videos, is those guys may not be primed for content.
Yeah, totally.
So like it's like if you're getting someone who knows the podcast, not the podcast space, but the concept of coming on and sharing their knowledge, which is why people who have launched a book are the best
Totally.
people in general. But funnily enough, there's actually a correlation between like poor performing episodes and people who've released books, because they're kind of on a run.
Yeah.
That like that content can be found on anyone's show,
Yeah, got it.
but the content's still super valuable.
Yeah.
Like it's a very unique episode. It's not like the basis of like most podcasts because it's the book, but it's a weird one. It's a weird one because I've seen a lot of other podcasts, even on my own show. I'm like, this deserves way more engagement.
Do you see a lot of? Because I've a lot of the time I just feel comfortable in monologue, just kind of ranting around an idea, and kind of just
tiring,
laying
right?
out. It is really tiring, but the other thing it doesn't. I'm not too concerned to produce a piece of content that goes for an hour. I'd rather just if it only takes me 5 minutes. If it takes me 5 minutes to get the point across, it's like, does that piece of content contribute and create enough leverage? Or because you hear the story of like authors the first time, incredible premise for a book, incredible IP, going to a publisher and going, it's amazing, but we need another 200 pages. And then what happens with the book is you get the whole value of the book in the first third, and then it's just a reiteration for the following 2/3 because they needed to hit their 400-page quota.
Yeah.
So is there kind of the same thing happening?
Well, if it's individual, like monologue, just you talking, then you don't need to labor on the point. I think the best podcast scenarios I would determine a podcast to be much more like two people, and it's more like flowy in between topics. Like you see me do handbrake turns in conversations, not often because there's a way to do that. It's like a bridge topic, and they're hard to do, even because a lot of this stuff is in my brain that I'm learning, that I've learned how to do these things. But you can only do handbrake turns in a podcast, not in a fucking individual video of how to improve someone's funnel, right?
Totally.
That's the 7-minute video.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to say exhausting. I meant to say authority to you earlier, or you're building more authority with individual videos, whereas like it's through the grapevine through a podcast. But that's why someone who's a beginner or starting works really well in the podcast context, because you can be the student and interview the biggest guest in the world, but just be someone who's inquisitive. Because dude, if you're young, dumb, people who are super successful would love to cling to you, educate you,
Totally.
and mentor you. And I've seen that with people that are 18, 19 that have clung to me, and I've helped a ton. Guys give up alcohol, start a business, fucking leave their shitty 9 to 5 just by virtue of the podcast. But similarly, the guests that I've on, some of the guys could be way further on, especially when I started, and they just like the philosophies, the values, the principle, the relentlessness. Like in a weak society, guys will fucking cling to someone who just doesn't give up.
Yeah, totally.
Genuinely. Like I remember hearing Sahil Bloom say this before, being like, you should just never bet against someone who's not willing to give up.
Yeah, totally.
It's the funniest thing. If you just keep on going, that person is dangerous, dude.
Oh, 100%.
Fucking dangerous. Because you can fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
If you're making 10, 15K a month, you can drop to 2K on a mastermind, learn all that shit to get you to 100K. And that person is way more dangerous than someone who came from money or who's smart or got the business opportunity. Like those guys, they all fizzle out.
Yeah.
And you're a little bit older than me, so you've probably seen the guys come in and out. But we're going to see a very interesting observation in the online business space, I think, over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys will go.
Yeah, totally. And you see, like the other thing as well is that, like there might be a boom and bust with particular markets, and that's why you shouldn't be interested in just learning everything in your community. It's really about trying to delve in, because not James Kemp, but the other James that was at the mastermind was kind of highlighting the idea around is is the more that you progress and the more you enter new environments, you learn how other people are moving in other ways. And like, I know for a fact that, and it should be for anyone. And like when you start living in different places and exposing yourself to different neighbors, and your kids go to school with different parents, and you know, their kids and their parents, you start realizing, oh man, like that there's people here that invest completely different to the way that I do. And the irony is if I'm not absolutely stupid, the vast majority of my worth will be the compounding of the cash flow, not the actual cash flow itself.
Dude, that's why, like, a 6-figure business is how hard can you work? 7-figure business is like, who can you hire? An 8-figure business is like, who can you partner with?
Yeah.
Because whether it's even cash flow, it's like, where do we put the money and who's the guy that can take care of it to invest it and whatnot?
Yeah.
It's less to do with the actual execution. It's more to do with, like, again, the leverage, the point of contact for leverage. And that's an 8-figure cash flow business a year.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a guy, Tim Stoddard, who'd be great to connect with for yourself as well, he kind of instilled that with me, because he's a little bit older than me, mid-30s. They're doing like 5.5-6 million a year. Awesome. He's barely doing 15-20 hours a week now. And he's about 4 or 5 different portfolio companies. Some are info, copy blogger is one of the companies. Some are like SEO, and then he's an SEO agency that has a full team that are doing done for you. And that's what he said to me early on. He was like, when you get good at something, you almost don't need to work anymore. You just need to find the right partner to elevate with. And that's even what we're thinking of doing even here, to build individual businesses here or whatnot, or more Asian partners. Dude, like, we have some partnerships with some crazy studios in the world for their back end and for our coaching program. All it took was an email.
Yeah.
An email and a call. Let's wrap up, dude. Gotta head to the airport.
Oh, yeah, good point. What time?